Everybody, weekly Q&A. I'm not as jacked as I sound. Definitely woke up tired today. Babies being babies. I got a little music in the background for this one, which is me, by the way. Just playing a little guitar loop. Couple big wins to share. We just had a workshop for a lot of the people in the group who are beginners. And we've already got some people getting wins out of that. I mentioned before we actually even did the workshop, Jade had mentioned that somebody had said I don't normally respond to these kind of things. They booked a meeting with him and said something along the lines of, um, I can see the value in that. And if somebody says, I see the value in that, that's usually a good sign that at the other end of that, they're going to want to pay you for that. So anyway, welcome. And if any of you guys, by the way, over the next few weeks, I want to work a lot with the people who are kind of at that stage where you're starting to have some virtual assistants, you're starting to scale the thing, and you almost have two jobs in that stage where you got to run the business and then you got to use your extra time to somehow grow it. And it's like they sometimes they're in competition when you're in that stage. I have some pretty amazing stuff for you guys. If you're interested in that, happy to have a free chat with you and just share some of my best ideas because it's useful to me to pick your brain a little bit. So if you're interested in grabbing one of those, I'm giving away a couple of spots. I haven't decided whether it be 3 or 5, but reach out anyway. Anywho, let's get into the questions that will be pretty awesome. So the first one is, this is a really, really interesting question that comes up pretty much all the time. How do you qualify leads coming in from a contact form? General contractor says 85% of the leads are trash, 60 to 90 leads per month from the contact form. So if you work with local businesses, so I'm just noticing food on my floor. That's the sign you got babies. There's smeared little cake. If you work with local businesses, they're going to tell you religiously that your leads are bad, and there's a couple of reasons. I would say 60% of the time it's their fault, meaning they're like just comically bad at closing. So to give you an example, I have a good friend named Seth. Seth owns a $5 million per year SEO agency and also owns a law firm. And he has a partner who does all the managing. And he was saying like one of the things they instituted, because all their leads primarily come from Google and SEO, is he realized on SEO, if somebody doesn't get an answer from you right away, they literally just move down to the next listing and they'll try the next company until somebody can handle their problem. And so what he realized is you can't wait. You can't sit on like or leads from Google. And so he sent a few to his dad, who's an old guy and mostly relied on referrals. And they sent him a lead on like a Friday afternoon. And they called him back Monday afternoon, so like 3 whole days later. And by that time, the person had found somebody else. So local businesses will do a lot of these, not answer the phone, and generally just like be really bad at closing people, and then blame you for the leads being bad. So when I hear 85% of the leads are trash, that is more than likely not the case. There's 2 ways you can deal with this, okay? One is before you start sending like your client a bunch of leads, get like some phone recording in place, like have a tracking phone number so that when his phone rings, you can actually listen to those phone calls, and they'll do really comically bad things like just not answer the phone, not call people back, or they'll have a live lead and they'll make it really hard to book with them. And so you got to like point these things out for them because they don't always know. And it's way easier to deal with that in the beginning than it is after month 2 when you're asking for another payment. But my best advice to you would be just don't work with those people. I found the sweet spot is when they're a real business to be big enough that they're not answering their own phone and they have a full-time person dedicated to that. But not so big that there's like bureaucracy and meetings and stuff to get done. So I like the level 2, level 3 kind of people where they're either still working in the business or they're kind of more functioning as a manager. But you're probably working with a contractor who answers the phone himself, swings a hammer, and those people are like, you almost can't give them money. And it's really, really hard in my experience. So what you'll find is that'll come up over and over and over and over and over and over again where they can't close the leads and they blame you. Now, 40% of the time, by the way, it's your fault. And a big reason why it's your fault is because not all leads are created equal. So let's say you mentioned contracting. Let's say you're working in the roofing space. If you send somebody like a leak, they might go out and make 100, $200 to fix a leak. If you send somebody to do a commercial roofing job, those leads, like one of those leads could be worth 100,000 and one could be worth like $200. So they're not like equal by any means. And so one of the things that I'll tell you that will just make your life a whole bunch easier is specialize in the $100,000 kind of leads, because you don't have to do nearly as much. So we're actually just working on a campaign. We got for some lawyer intellectual property. We got motorcycle cases, and motorcycle cases are typically worth between 25 and 80 grand for a lawyer. So you can like generate them 3 sales a year and they love you, right? And it makes your job a whole lot easier. So wherever possible, specialize and then deal with like real businesses, and like 90% of those headaches will go away. But this is a really common thing, by the way, is they'll say, oh, all my leads are bad and it's all your fault and you're just sending trash. And more than likely, when I hear that, it's probably not true. I've actually had clients, like I joke, but it's kind of true, where if I had mailed them a $100,000 check, they wouldn't have walked to the mailbox to pick it up. And this sounds like one. Actually, just a quick little story on that. You guys probably heard me tell this before, but I remember I was working with Dan in the group with some roofers, and we had like a do-it-yourself kind of contractor. His name was Eddie. And we recorded all our calls so we could listen to Eddie talking. The phone rang, and Eddie's wife picked it up, and we were running an ad that said like 5-star roofing, and we had some reviews and things like that. And so the person's expecting this really high-end roofing company, and Eddie's wife answers the phone and is like, hello? The guy's like, is this 5-star roofing? And she's like, hello? Dude goes through it again. And eventually they start arguing. She's like, Eddie, come back to the fucking phone! And they're like yelling and screaming at each other for like 7-10 minutes. Finally, Eddie picks up the phone and is like, you need a roof? And needless to say, Eddie didn't get that roofing job. But he'll tell you, those are bad leads. And they don't realize like how unprofessional they can be. So don't deal with those people, and you know, obviously choose the right leads to begin with, because they're not all created equal. Jade, why use PayPal and Stripe rather than just have them pay you directly? If they can pay you directly, go for it. The thing that you don't want to screw up, okay? So a lot of times people try and save a nickel and a couple of percentage points. And I'm not saying that isn't useful, but in the beginning of your agency, that's like a really big waste of time. Just like suck up the $100 or $200 you got to give to Stripe or PayPal. And the reason is because when somebody says yes and they would like to proceed with whatever your offer is, it can be really, really difficult in that moment to then like, okay, well, why don't you mail me a check and then we'll wait, and then after a week when it clears my bank, then we can get started. There's all this like loss of momentum. So you want it to be like seamless from the time they say yes to take payment to then begin the project and start setting expectations and start like, you know, doing whatever you need to do to get them results. So those are just the 2 easiest versions of that. So if you have a way where they can like literally pay you quickly, then by all means use that alternative. But it's more about like the speed and not losing the sale the minute they say yes, which can happen, by the way, where if they say yes and then you need to figure out 3-4 days to pay you, they may have a change of heart in those 3-4 days. So you want it just to be really simple and seamless, 30 seconds, 60 seconds, take their credit card, and then move on to servicing them as your client. Duncan, if I have a registered UK business, chatbot, and Facebook agency, does anyone know if I can work with Australian clients? Since I'm currently based here at the moment, I'm working full-time but started my agency. I don't know the specifics of your tax law, Duncan, but yes, you can most definitely work with people internationally. I have been doing that since 2007. And obviously, Canadian laws are different than Australian laws, but it's pretty universal. There's usually some forms. So I have to sign something that's called a W-8 when I work with some American clients, but there'll be some kind of form like that. You'd have to ask around because I don't know what it is for Australians, but yes, short answer is yes, you can do it. How do you qualify leads in pay-per-lead or PPL? In the past, I used to just do it by time. Any call under a minute wasn't a qualified lead. It seemed to work well. On my current project, we have someone listen to all the calls and verify it's a quality lead that way. The niche I'm in, I generate a ton of calls, so this is going to start eating up a ton of time. My thinking is just to mark the call over a minute as qualified and then spot check by listening to 5 to 10% of qualified leads. Do you see any flaws in my thinking? Is there any way you would suggest? I think someone talking about transcription software for this too. Matt, there's a way easier answer, which is just price your leads accordingly, in the sense of like, let's say they'd be willing to pay $300 for a good lead, but you might get 8 shitty phone calls, then I might just price all leads at $30 and just say whether it's a good lead or not. That's the price. And then when they get the phone call, you charge them regardless. And then you don't have to do all that quality control. You can let them know that like we get a mix of everybody. This is Google. Shitty people call, good people call. There's a whole mix and a whole range of it. I set the price to kind of accommodate that, and then you don't have to do any quality control. What you find is if you set that expectation that some are good, some are bad, it's a whole mix, but the end net result will be worth it. Clients will stay, by the way. So it's really actually an issue of expectations, as with most client things, which I mentioned in this fancy book over there. So yeah, you probably want to read that, but it's really not an issue of qualify every lead and fact check everything and make it a minute or not a minute. You don't necessarily have to have those rules. Just tell the clients, I charge you for everything, but the price is set so it's adjusted based on the total value of all the leads. And that kind of honesty and transparency, by the way, works really well. Clients love that because they're not used to hearing that. John, I was wondering if anyone has any suggestions how to try out a new media buyer on live campaigns while containing risk. We are working with a very high budget project, spend $1 million a month and above. And the idea of hiring someone new and giving them access to all my campaigns immediately is terrifying. The wrong person could wreck our business in no time. Thanks for your input. I've been there, John, where you have like a really important account. You don't want someone to screw it up. So, this is a practical example of the idea I wrote in the book of a first date. Like give them a clear, specific, measurable thing. Like, hey, we'd like to give you a test. If the campaign's $1 million a month, then something small like 10 grand, 25 grand, something like that, and give them something to work with and make them have to prove themselves with you. Don't say like, hey, you get the whole $1 million budget, I'm turning the whole thing over to you, because that is, you're right, a recipe for disaster. But there's also like the added element of it's not just like, will they be successful? Like, will you guys work together well personality wise? One of my mentors said, I don't tolerate brilliant assholes. He had a guy he worked with who was really good at getting results, but was just kind of a dick the whole way, and he wasn't fun to work with. And so it was, this weird thing where, he felt kind of captive because the guy could deliver, but at the same time, he's like, not fun to work with. So for you, figure out like what the smallest first date is, and then slowly, gradually give over control to him. And I would say that's a good recipe for every account and every employee in every situation. So I would never just turn over $1 million account and say, you manage it, I'm hands off, and like risk your name and reputation. But if they can take like a little bite-sized chunk, try something, demonstrate their value, demonstrate they work together, then it's a recipe to then give them more and more trust gradually. And I suggest you structure your agency like that all the time. Most people have a broken hiring process, which says, I give you a job and then I give you a steady paycheck, and there's not really all that clear about it. But what happens is if you give somebody a first date and some targets and some expectations of what will work well together, you can kind of like grow into that position together. And what will happen is you'll have more harmonious relationships with your employees, with everybody, because everybody will be on the same page. And it's psychologically powerful because people still feel like they have to keep earning their job rather than like if you think about the average American employee. And I'm not picking on like Americans as a whole. This is true anywhere, but like I'm talking the average low level, working at Walmart, McDonald's, whatever. They don't give a fuck, right? Like they're just trying to collect a paycheck. So you have to do a lot to screen for that. I'm just trying to collect a paycheck kind of person. And the best way to do that is first dates. So take that concept really, really deep. Give some first dates. Mo, what do you guys do or say if a potential client asks for references to verify your credentials, track record, etc.? That's a especially challenging question in the beginning, Mo. So a couple of answers for that. One is that if you know that objection is going to come up And there's some niches that comes up more than others. So like lawyers is when it came up a lot for me in the beginning because the lawyers are very like risk averse. So are like kind of accountants, engineers, like doctors that higher end. They're going to probably more than other professions check your references. And so when you know this is the case, it's usually because they just don't want to be the first one to make a mistake. But once you know this is the case, deal with it earlier in your process. So show examples of whoever you have, assuming you have them. And also, like, it helps, like, on your sales calls, like, at the very beginning, when somebody tells you their situation, just to say little hints, like, hey, you remind me of Dave. Dave was in this situation and that situation. And it was almost exactly the same. And what'll happen is that won't come up at the end if you deal with it at the beginning. That's how I dealt with that. Once I dealt with that objection, like the credit card was just there at the end. So, and then another thing is to make a page of all your client testimonials. Make it so right after they book with you, that's the first thing they see is your track record and everything that's worked for everybody. And that's if you have it. Now, if you don't have it, I would just be completely honest with them. People are amazed that they think you have to have done this 27 times. But the actual thing they want to know is, can you do it for me? So what I would do in that specific case is I would never done it for a client. I would just show them an example of what I have planned for them. And I've never seen that not go over well. So I'll like show them an example of like, here's a retargeting campaign I plan to run for you guys. Do you think that would work? And they say, yeah, I think that would work. And then you go, okay, well, I'll be honest with you. I've never actually tested this with somebody in your situation, but I'm like 90% sure it would work. Would you be open to just trying it and seeing where it goes, right? And when you say that, like people aren't like, I need all your track record and references and blah, blah, blah. Sometimes you might have to guarantee it, like the money. So I might say like, I'll charge you $5,000 for this. And if for any reason we're not able to hit those results, I'll be happy to issue you a refund in like a couple of weeks. But other than that, that's basically how you deal with that is deal with it up front. And if you don't have it, just be honest with them. And you'd be surprised how cool it is. As long as people believe you can help them, and the best way to do that is show them your plan, then they're down. Alon, LinkedIn automation, go or no go? If so, what tool do you use? Alon, this is true of any automation software funnel. Is people try and build the funnel at the wrong time? It's like the wrong tool for the wrong job. And so I was actually just talking to somebody in the group in like the middle of the night. And she was telling me, I need to get my VSL and my ads up and all those things. Now, she's a beginner, and anything that she would do in like a VSL or an ad or anything like that, even though like coming from the right place, is almost guaranteed not to work, like with 100% certainty, because you're automating something that's never worked in the first place. So you always need to dial in your process manually with real people. Like when I built my $50,000 to $100,000 a month webinar funnel in the lawyers, that was just like the one funnel. What made it work is that I had talked to 100 lawyers, and I could speak the thoughts in their head because I had had so many conversations with them. So by the time I made a webinar, it was like they would listen to it and be like, this guy gets me, he's talking to me, right? But I really was, right? So what happens is too many people try and automate what's not working, and then they work so much fucking harder trying to blast, to bukkake the world, just send thousands of messages. And what happens is if you get it working on a small scale, you'll be amazed even today with cold outreach is that you can get anywhere from like 3 to 8 people out of 10 to respond to you positively about what you're selling and get in buying conversations like really, really quickly, direct to the decision maker in a matter of minutes if your offer is on point. So when you have that, by all means, automate the fuck out of it. But what happens is most people try and automate something that's not ready to be automated. And so I would say for like 90% of the people listening to this, don't use a tool, because a tool is just going to make you think about it as a transactional bukkake the world. And what will happen is you'll have a really bad offer, really bad numbers, and then you'll have to just spam. You will cross the line into spammer really, really fast. As where if your offer works, you'd be amazed at how positively people respond. Like I mentioned at the top of the show, where Jade got a response that was, just after its first couple of messages, that was, hey, I never normally respond to these kind of things, but I see the value in that. And when somebody, like I said, when somebody says, I see the value in that, they're like quite literally thinking of paying for it. So that kind of stuff is killer. So, and that goes, I just say, that's not limited to LinkedIn automation, but that's certainly true of LinkedIn automation. Abbas, How do you manage a remote team and make sure that they're working productively and efficiently? I'm assuming you have virtual assistants, since they're a remote team, and they're probably either Philippines, India, or somewhere in South America. I'm going to guess one of those three places. I'll tell you what worked for me, and this is by certainly not all the only way to do it. Um, but I used to do two things. One was software called Time Doctor, which you can get for $10 a user for $10. They basically just take a screenshot of them every like 15 minutes or so randomly at certain time intervals, and they have to click on the software when they're logging into work. And then when they're finished their work hour, they click, and it measures kind of everything they're doing in that time, and it'll send you, the owner of the system, like a report, however often you want it. I chose weekly because I didn't really have time to look into all that stuff daily, but you'll see amazing things. I actually had to fire an employee once for watching cartoon porn. I actually gave him a second chance, and then he went ahead the second day and turned to cartoon porn, and he knew he was being watched because he has to click the screen recording software. And then the other thing is, what helped me a lot was certain third world employees feel kind of like shy. They don't like to bother you. They think of you as this really busy, successful, high-end, even if you feel like you're a struggling freelancer just trying to make it work. And so what happens is they won't reach out to you. And so I would make them proactively send me an end of shift report. It was just 3 sentences. Just said, what did you do today? What problems or challenges do you have, and what do you need my help with? And those 3 things I would make them send me every single day at the end of their shift. Takes them like 5 minutes because it's just a sentence each. Today I did some social bookmarking. I couldn't register on this account. Maybe we should move it from our list. Do you have a way to register on that account? I could use some help for that. And then it helps you like kind of manage the system. So Time Doctor plus end of shift reports. There are other like similar softwares and project management, but I always personally like Time Doctor for remote employees. And what you'll find too is positively, you'll find like some of your employees, you'll be blown away at how hard they work for you. I was like, when I first started using that, I expected I was going to like catch people not working for me. And some of my employees I found like, man, like I need to give you a raise. You're just like, you're a machine. You don't even waste 5 minutes a day. So that was kind of amazing to find out. Alex, what is your best strategy to find new clients? Alex, that's a general question because it depends on which clients you want. Not all clients are created equal. Perfect example of this, somebody in one of our masterminds named Thomas, in his city, he was doing all the local SEO, and he was doing it for the little mom and pop shops. And, I love those people, but those people you should work with more on like charity, not as like the people to build your business around. And he was making like $500 a month. And one of the things we did for him is reposition it to like a higher level. And he got a couple of government contracts as well as some like bigger businesses all in his city, right? And so he started getting clients for like $100,000 instead of $500 a month. And the crazy thing is, and you won't know this until you do it, but the $100,000 clients are far, far easier than $500 a month clients, because for $500 a month, usually they've invested their last amount of money in you and they're almost kind of desperate. So they want to check on it, they want to talk, and they need to know how it's working. And it's like, I have more meetings about clients in my life that are under $500 and below than clients who pay me. Like, you'd be amazed. A client will pay you $100,000 or run a $100,000 a month campaign with you and not even need to talk to you at all. And they're busy and they just want to know the absolute minimum. It's kind of mind-boggling how that works that way. So before you decide like how do you get new clients, which is very generic, like how do you get the right clients? And the simple answer is to go where they go and make them an offer they can't say no to. Now, I know that sounds really simple, and there's a lot of things that can go wrong in that. So firstly, where do they go? Almost always there's at least a group or a community or somewhere online where they've already self-organized, and your only job is to get into it. So when I went to first start working with lawyers, there were a lot more lawyers on LinkedIn than there were on Facebook. So I decided to do most of my prospecting and marketing on LinkedIn. And that was only a decision just based on the fact that's where they were, right? So, and that's where they still are. But you can do the same thing in a Facebook group. So you go where they are, and then you have to figure out what they're really stuck on, what their real problems are, and what they really need for a solution. And when you make like that kind of killer offer, it almost becomes second nature for them just to say yes to you, right? So it's really a combination of those two things. People like to make it more complicated than that, but it's really not. As we just launched the course last week, You can be talking to like ideal business owners about what you have for sale and like a real buying conversation within 10 minutes. And you can usually sell your shit within a day or two. And it doesn't really take any more than that if you go where they go and you make an offer they need. And then when you do that and then you strap automation to it, it like tends to kick ass. But usually I find most people want to go straight to the automation because they want to try and avoid talking to people and not build a business that way. And I'm all for that, by the way. Most of my clients I don't talk to at all. Like I'm very removed from that in my business. But you can't start there. You have to get in their head, understand their real problems, and then build the automation to sort those. So if you do that, you will kick ass. As I mentioned, by the way, if you're one of the people who's working on scaling, meaning you have some virtual assistants, but you're still like kind of managing the business yourself, and you do any kind of SEO or Google ads or Facebook ads or YouTube ads, that's my bread and butter really for like helping you guys crush it. Both like there's a couple things we usually do. One is up your level of client you're getting, up the amount of money you're getting, and up the results you give them, so it's easier to get those fees. They're all interlinked together, right? If you're getting somebody $5,000 a month and suddenly you're able to get them 20 grand a month, then you can justify a higher fee easily. And it's not always shifting what you're doing. It's just little tweaks in it. Like I mentioned, if you go from trying to generate leaky roofs to all of a sudden generating commercial roof jobs, automatically you become more valuable. So if you're interested in chatting with me, I'm giving away a couple of free chats. Just reach out to me in Messenger if that's your situation. And we can jump on the phone. There's nothing for sale at the end of it. I'm just going to give you my best stuff to help you for 45 minutes. And then what I get out of that is I'm picking your brain for all the content ideas and material and stuff to share. So I give you guys shit ton of value if that's in your situation. But obviously I got 2 kids, so I can only do so much of that, maybe 5 maximum. So if you're interested in that, reach out. And if you guys have any other questions, you can always give a brother a holler and shoot me a message. And I'd be happy to share any cool shit that'll help you. I've been doing this a long time, and I have a very abundant mentality about it where I think what we do in the world is so underrated. Like we really take deserving businesses and give them a platform. And right now with everything that's happening in Corona, in many ways, these businesses, many of them won't survive without your help and your outside eyes. So like what you do is more needed in the world than ever before. And so if there's anything I can do to help you with that, or you just have questions, let's do it. And I see Anil Kabir saying, hey, look at that. Pretty lady watching me. Anyways, guys, I will, last thing, I will post the replay below this on YouTube. So if you want to catch out some of the replays or whatever, I'm going to be posting as we go some really cool shit that's there. There's a YouTube channel. It's a small, tiny corner of the internet, and I'm not trying to build it up to anything big, but I would love for you guys to come join, just have it be a private, little, intimate, really cool place where we share our best stuff. So that's all I got for you guys. Peace!